Okay guys, so this is the notes for our first day of class. It's in the appendix, section 3. We're going to look at part of that section today on polynomials and factoring. So with the polynomials, there are just some things that I want you to try and remember from your previous classes. If you read through pages 966 through 968, there's just some different keywords in there, vocabulary words that you need to remember, things like what a polynomial is, coefficient, the different terms, those type of things. And then we're going to spend most of the time in the notes part here today looking at remembering how and different methods of factoring. So that's what we're going to spend most of our time on. You also want to make sure that when you're reading through some of those initial pages that you can add and subtract, look at how to review how to add and subtract polynomials as well as multiply them out. We're not going to spend any time in the notes going over that, but that's something that you want to make sure that you remember how to do. So we have our special products that are ways that we can factor. So a couple of these are the reviews. So we have the difference of two squares. We also have squares of binomials, perfect square trinomials, so these are special cases as well. Two new ones that we have are the difference of two cubes and the sum of two cubes. Now, in terms of factoring, what you're going to want to see is you're going to want to have both terms be perfect cubes, whether that's from the difference or the sum, and then you're going to factor into a binomial and then a trinomial for each of these. Couple things to kind of keep in mind. This first binomial that we have right here is going to be the cube root of each of these first two terms. And so when I think about trying to find this initial value, I'm going to take the cube root of this and the cube root of this. Then for the second part, the trinomial, this first term here is the squared value of this x. The last term of the trinomial is the square of this value, and then the middle term is the product of those two values. Now you have to keep in mind the signs. What you need to remember for the signs is that whatever the sign of the original problem is right here is going to match the sign right here, and then the opposite sign will appear right here. The first and last terms of that trinomial will always be positive, so this is always going to be a positive sign right here. And that's the same thing for down here. This is going to be positive, but then this sign is the same as this, and this sign right here is always opposite of what this sign is. So we'll do an example in a minute of one of these, but that's another special case. All right, so here's a couple other things to just kind of read through in the book, and you can do that on your own time if you need to. We're going to look at a few examples here. So one method here of factoring a trinomial, we want to look for a greatest common factor. There is no greatest common factor, so we can do what's called splitting the middle term and factoring by grouping. So this is just a way that I organize what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to take the a value of 10 and the c value of negative 18 and multiply them together, which gives me negative 180. I'm going to look at the b value here of negative 3, and I want to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 180 and add up to be negative 3. So in that case, it would be a negative 15 and a positive 12. So what I'm going to do to my trinomial is split the middle term. So the first term stays the same, 10x squared, but then I'm going to have a minus 15x, a plus 12x, and a minus 18. The last term also stays the same. So then at that point, I'm going to group my terms together. So these first two get grouped together, and that gives me a GCF of 5x, which then when I take 5x out, I'm left with 2x minus 3. If I look at my second group here, my greatest common factor is a positive 6, and that also leaves me with 2x minus 3. And so the factors of this polynomial are 2x minus 3, and then 5x plus 6. Next example is a little bit easier. This is a trinomial that has an a value that's 1. So when the a value is 1, it's a lot easier. You can still make that x that we did before. Here, when we multiply a and c together, it's just really the c value of negative 14, and the b value is 5. So I'm looking for two values that multiply to be negative 14 and add up to be 5. So that would be a positive 7 and a negative 2. So then my factors are just x plus 7 and x minus 2. Not a need to go through all the steps that we did on the top part because the a value is only 1. Perfect square trinomial, you can treat this like you did the trinomial at the top there, or if you can recognize that this falls into this perfect square trinomial pattern where this first term is a perfect square, the last term is a perfect square, and we've got a times c giving us this middle value as well, then if we think about factoring, the square root of this term here is 2x, and so I have a 2x as the first term in both my binomials. The square root of 1 is 1, so I have that. Now the only way I can get 1 is to multiply 1 times 1 or negative 1 times negative 1. Since this term right here is negative, I need a negative sign for both of those. And so negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, 2x times 2x is 4x squared, and then the inside terms and the outside terms would combine to give me the negative 4x. So a shorter way that I can write this answer is 2x minus 1 quantity squared. All right, difference of two squares, this is just a pattern should hopefully be able to quickly recognize. We're going to take the square root of each of those, so 6x is the square root of 36x squared. 7 is the square root of 49. Following our rule, 1 will be plus, and 1 will have a minus sign. So 6x plus 7 times 6x minus 7. Now here's a difference of two cubes. So this is one of the new ones. So if I'm looking at this, I want to have a binomial and then my trinomial. If I think about what is the cube root of this term right here, that would give me a 2x. If I look at the cube root of this term, that would be 1. Cube root of 1 is 1. So then I know that the signs have to be the same, so this is going to be a minus sign. For the first term in my trinomial, I'm going to take the first term of my binomial and square it. I square both the coefficient and the variable. That gives me the 4x squared. For the last term, I'm going to take the last term in my binomial and square it, which would be a positive 1, 1 times 1 being 1. And then the middle term has to have the opposite sign of what we have right here. And it's the product of the two terms in the binomial, so I end up with 2x right there. And so my factors are 2x minus 1 times 4x squared plus 2x plus 1. All right, and then the last one we have here is a factoring by grouping problem. This is similar to a few steps that we did earlier in one of our problems. So our first group has a greatest common factor of x squared, leaving me with x plus 5. My second group has a greatest common factor of negative 2, and I want to factor out the negative so that what I have left is positive, matching what I already have inside that first binomial, and so that also leaves me with x plus 5. And so my factors for this problem are x squared minus 2 and x plus 5. All right, here's your assignment. If you have questions on that, bring that to class or come see me at lunch or after school.